Good morning. It's time for another morning Bible study. I'm your host, Logan McCulley, and this is the place where we get in depth into the Bible. I'm not a pastor. You might be a pastor, but I'm trying to learn and understand the Bible, and that's what we're doing. I'm learning, you're learning, we're all learning together. That being said, we're getting into Revelations 12 today. In the chapter 12 is titled The Woman, the Child, and the Dragon. Interesting. Last time we hit the seventh trumpet and the kingdom proclaimed, how that happened, okay? So like we talked about the two witnesses that prophesied. We talked about them being killed and going straight to heaven. We talked about, or killed and then being resurrected and then going straight to heaven. Then we talked about that last trumpet, and now we're in another interlude, another change up, another tone change. And that's where we are, Revelations 12. So, without further ado, let's hop right in. Now, a great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. All right, let's pause there. Let's not go too much further. Let's talk about what we just heard, okay? So, now a great sign. The sign, a symbol pointing to something else. This is the first of 7 signs in the last half of Revelations. Okay, cool. So the first of 7 signs. Now, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. All right. A woman, not actually a woman, but a symbolic representation of Israel, pictured in the Old Testament as the wife of God. 3 other symbolic women appear in Revelation 1. Jezebel, who represents paganism, and 2, the Scarlet Woman, and then now, we haven't got there. In 17:3-6, the Scarlet Woman is in 17:3-6, symbolizing the apostate church, and the third one is the wife of the Lamb, symbolizing the true church. This woman does not represent the church is clear from the context. All right, so let's just touch that again. The 3 women that are going to be recognized here later in Revelation is Jezebel, who represents paganism, the Scarlet Woman, symbolizing the apostate church, and the wife of the Lamb, symbolizing the true church. This woman we're currently talking about does not represent the church, and that is clear from the context. All right, so there's going to be a great sign. A woman clothed with the sun. So we're not talking about the true church right now. We're talking about what? We don't know. A symbol pointing to something else. And again, I like that about my reference, man, because, sometimes you just don't know. And I heard someone say something about Revelations on, like, the Duck Dynasty podcast. I don't know. If you listen to this, you probably listen to them. They do a Bible study. And it's like, he was talking about how it's sometimes hard culturally to understand. So that's why context is important in the Bible. If you can get those 3 things right, you'll get the Bible right. Context. And he was saying it's kind of like if I try to tell you a joke about somewhere over here in, I think he was like in Babylon. I don't know where he's at. Egypt maybe. And he's like, if I tell you the joke, well then first I have to tell you where the things are, what they mean, and then the joke might be funny to you. But even then, you still may not get it. So when you think about that, that's why context is so important in all the rest of the Bible. And he's like, Revelations, we don't know the context, right? Like, we don't know where we're going or where it's going to be happening. So we make up what we think can fit what Revelations say. So Revelations is a hard one to understand. And I may have did a poor job explaining that correctly, but we just don't know what the sign will actually be. So, in this reference, he said something. We don't know, but it's going to be a symbol pointing to something else. All right, so that being said, this great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with sun. Why? All right, let's take a moment. Clothed with sun with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Being clothed with the sun speaks of glory, dignity, and exalted status of Israel, the people of promise who will be saved and given a kingdom. The picture of the moon under her feet possibly describes God's covenant relationship with Israel, since new moons were associated with worship. The 12 stars represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Ah, okay. But again, that was the reference, and it said possibly represents. Because you don't know what you don't know. In verse 2, it goes on and talks about this woman. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. Israel, often pictured as a mother giving birth, had agonized and suffered for centuries, longing for the Messiah to come and destroy Satan, sin, and death, and usher in the kingdom. Okay. All right, now let's get into verses like 3 through 6. And this is where I was like, whoa, okay, interesting. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who is ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Caught up, like caught a bird, up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days, which is, I think, the 3.5 years. So what does this mean? This is another sign. All right. A great fiery dragon. The woman's mortal enemy is Satan, who appears as a dragon 13 times in this book. Okay, I did not know that. 13 times, Satan is a great fiery red dragon. All right. 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 diadems. This is figurative language depicting Satan's domination of the 7 past worldly kingdoms and 10 future kingdoms. Satan has and will rule the world until the 7th trumpet blows. He has inflicted relentless pain on Israel, desiring to kill the woman before she could bring forth the child that would destroy him. He wants to kill that woman before the child gets here. And Satan has ruled the world and will rule the world until the 7th trumpet blows, and has constantly inflicted relentless pain on Israel. Interesting. How they put it in perspective. Alright, so we started off, you had another sign. It appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who is ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. So 1/3 of the stars in heaven. Satan's original rebellion resulted in 1/3 of the angelic host joining his insurrection and becoming demons. I had no idea. It was 1/3. 1/3 of the stars in heaven, the dragon took down. That is crazy. I mean, it depicts it perfectly, right? To devour her child. Unable to prevent the virgin birth of Christ, Satan tried to kill the child in a general massacre of male children commanded by Herod. That is true as well. Wow. Okay. In 5, we go on and say, she bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. The male child, Jesus Christ, in his incarnation was of Jewish descent. Despite Satan's efforts to destroy Israel and the messianic line, Jesus' birth took place as predicted by the prophets. Yeah. Rod of iron. It describes Jesus' coronation as king over the nations of the world. Her child was caught up to God. This is what I'm interested in. Christ's ascension is in view in Acts. I just don't get the word caught. Her child was caught up to God. Not called, but caught. That's weird, right? Add it to the list of things you can ask God when you get to heaven. In verse 6, then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. God will protect Israel from Satan by hiding her in the wilderness, perhaps in the region of Moab, Ammon, and Edom, east of Israel. Interestingly, those countries will be specifically spared from the Antichrist's attack against the Holy Land. Why 1,260 days? At the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist breaks his covenant with Israel, puts a stop to temple worship, sets up the abomination of desolation, and devastates Jerusalem. At that time, many Jews flee for their lives. God will preserve them during the last 1,260 days, or 42 months, or 3.5 years, constituting the Great Tribulation. So this is just a representation of everything, kind of a accumulation of where we are now in Revelation. And through the imagery of the woman that's clothed in fire, standing on the moon, and her head a garland of 12 stars. And then the dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. And they're constant back and forth. Alright, now we're going to move into a tone change, okay? We're going into verse 7. And we'll probably do 7 all the way through 12. Just to get the feel of it. Alright. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought. But they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren who are accused before our God day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. That was meaty. Let's go through that verse by verse, okay? Because Logan heard that, but it didn't stick being in one big chunk like that. All right, so let's start at the beginning. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. Comma, but that's the end of that verse. A war, though. The tumultuous events on earth during the tribulation find their counterpart in heaven. A state of war has existed since the fall of Satan. Something will intensify that warfare, possibly the raptured saints passing through the realm of the prince of power of the air. So there's this war that's been going on forever and ever and ever. And then when this tribulation's going on, it gets intensified. Verse 8, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So war broke out, and then they didn't win. And then it's like, hey guys, you're not going to be here anymore. Okay. Verse 9. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to earth, and his angels were cast out with him. All right. Satan and his demons were cast out of heaven at the time of their original rebellion, but still have access to it. The access will then be denied, and they will be forever barred from heaven. What? That access will be denied, and they will be forever barred from heaven. Why weren't they barred before? I don't know. But that's the breakdown. That's not the Bible. So, take it with a grain of salt. I love John MacArthur, but, I can't. He's been in the Bible many more years than I have, so he probably knows where those references are. I do not. So I'm just going to stick to the Bible. Devil and Satan. Devil comes from a Greek verb meaning to slander or to falsely accuse. He is malignant. He is a malignant liar. His accusations against believers are unsuccessful because of Christ, our advocate. Satan, meaning adversary or enemy, appears especially in Job and the Gospels. So the devil means to slander. Satan is our adversary or enemy. So the slanderer, the liar, and our enemy. That person deceives the whole world. Really? Where did it say that? Oh yeah, it says the devil and Satan who deceives the whole world. As he has throughout human history, Satan will deceive people during the tribulation. After his temporary release from the bottomless pit at the end of the millennium, he will briefly resume his deceitful ways. That's a scary thought. Just to dwell on that for a moment, the devil will be able to get out and do that. The devil's out now. That's a scary enough thought. Verse 10. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength, this is where I got lost. Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren, who accuse them before our God day and night, has been cast down. All right, that was kind of meaty. The accuser is Satan will no longer accuse believers before the throne of God because he will no longer have access to heaven. Interesting. I have heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren. So all this has come, or God has come, for the accuser of our brethren, who accuse them before our God day and night, has been cast down. Okay, so literally Satan's accusing us in front of God, and now he's been cast down by God. Okay. 11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. No accusation can stand against those whose sins have been forgiven because of Christ's sacrificial death. And they overcame him. They overcame the overcomers. All because of the blood of the Lamb. This is a great time to stop and say, if you don't know Jesus, if you've not accepted Jesus, if you don't know the blood of the Lamb, if you haven't repented, if you haven't gone through and actually become a Christian, now's the time to do it. And specifically, I want you to think about those people in your life that don't have the fruit. Don't be afraid to be a fruit inspector. You can see if someone's living the way God wants them to pretty easily. Like, you can see, you can tell, you can know. So, look at your people, reach out, be on fire for God. Don't let them go to hell just because you didn't want to talk to them about it. How selfish is that? All right. The lamb, the blood of the lamb, the blood of the lamb, the blood of the lamb. The lamb that has the seal to the title deed of the universe, by the way. Therefore, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea. For the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. Why short time? That's what kind of caught my eye, and thank goodness there's a breakdown for it. Knowing that his time is limited, Satan will intensify his efforts against God and mankind, specifically target Israel. Because we're at the seventh seal. We're in the seventh seal, past the seventh seal. The devil knows it. So he will intensify that persecution, accusation, whatever he does. All right, now we're going to move in from 13 to 17. All right, we'll just do a quick overview, and then we'll come back and hit it verse by verse. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time. What? For time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon has spewed out of its mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who kept the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So we're back to that imagery of the woman and the dragon. When the dragon saw that he had been cast to earth, so the devil's cast back down to earth, what did he do? He persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. So he persecuted Israel, who gave birth to Jesus. But this woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. Why is it worded so weird there about the times and half a time and time away from the serpent? That's verbatim, by the way. But other than that, let's get back on wings of a great eagle. Not actual birds' wings, but a graphic depiction of God's providential protection of Israel. Wings often speak of protection. Eagles, probably vulture-like griffins, were the largest birds known in Palestine. So the protection of God is what we're really talking about. So the serpent got mad. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood, to kind of literally flush her out. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon had spewed out of its mouth. The earth opened its mouth. A great army will come against Israel like a flood. All right, I see the depiction there. Only to be swallowed up perhaps in conjunction with one of the numerous earthquakes that occur during that period. Man. Can you imagine that? Like, legitimately an army getting swallowed up by an earthquake and then going, hey, it's here in the Bible. What's going on, guys? Like, I don't know if that is what the Bible is specifically talking about, or if the thing that happened in the world, and that whenever that happens, is what the Bible is specifically referencing. But if that were to happen, I would be looking real hard about the other events going around in the world. I'm just saying. It'd be pretty crazy. In 17, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who kept the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So the rest of her offspring, Satan will turn his frustrated rage against every follower of the Lamb he can find, Jew or Gentile. The commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. The revealed truth from God and of Christ contained in Scripture, obedience to God's word always marks a genuine believer. So he will then turn and come toward us. Because we keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Well done, good and faithful servant. That's the word you're looking for. That's wild. Now I don't understand everything. But how does this fit in? This is what's crazy to me. This is just a depiction of what's going to happen on the Satan side of things with the end times, right? Because this doesn't have anything to do with the trumpets, it doesn't have anything to do with the seals. This is what Satan's doing on his side of everything. And I wonder, it keeps going in talking about Satan and what he's doing around here. So that's interesting. Okay. So we know what God's done up to this point. And we know what Jesus has done. He's given the title deed to the universe. And then now we know what Satan's doing. Okay. He's going to be continue to doing some stuff in Revelations 13. And then we'll see what comes up after that. Like, again, I've never read this, so I don't know. We're all getting in this together. And I appreciate that if you're watching this. I do have an ask for you. Please pray for me and my wife. Baby's growing. We want it to keep growing and staying where it's at until it's ready to come out. So if we can keep him in there, that'd be great. Let me pray for you. I'm going to pray for me, and then we'll get out of here. Lord, please bless the words we received. Let them stick to our brains, stick to our soul, that we can keep them and work on us forever and ever. Specifically, work on us today as we go throughout everything that we do. Working, schooling, parenting, being the boss, having the hard conversations. Let us honor you in everything that we do. Everything that we do. And help us keep our eyes on you, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen. That's it, guys. I did want to mention something because it came up in our men's group last night, and I thought it was really cool. We were going through this Tony Evans Bible study, Wednesday night study, I don't know, about U-turn, about idolatry. Now, last night specifically was about idolatry, but basically the question was, what in your life is your false idol? Everyone's got them. And the guy that was running the class, his thing that he used, he said, I'm going to admit something to y'all, and you may know this, but you probably don't. I have an issue. Model trains. And everyone's like, what? Model trains. Apparently that's a big stumbling block in his life. It has caused issues, and he recognizes that, and it's something that he's working on. That is his false idol. And I went, man, model trains? Model trains? He used the story that this last Christmas, or every Christmas, they have a family party that him and his wife throw on. And he puts out this big train set, and it's a big Christmas theme, and he makes sure everything looks good, everything's right, and everybody loves it. Well, last year, it didn't work right. And it bugged him, or he sat there and worked on it, up until the point his family was walking in and helping set up for the dinner, to set up for the party. They were helping set up the chairs, and his wife was so embarrassed, and she was mad, and he couldn't get past that in his brain. And I have that issue with a lot of things. Like I really struggle sometimes just letting things go. It's like stuck, and I can't just get past it. So him talking about that, I was like, what is my false idol? Like, it can be something as silly as model trains, right? Like, you can get really in depth into like camping gear, right? Like, you could travel for me, man. Like, just thinking about, okay, so if I want to get this size camper, I need to get this size truck. I got to look at anything that you're just like deferring what you should be thinking about by thinking about this thing, I think is the key here. So like, I went to a suicide awareness thing when I was in nursing school, and it was Suicide Anonymous. So you got like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Suicide Anonymous. Well, the thing that got me about the suicide people is that all these people were alive, and all of them like tried to commit suicide. But like, for me, like if I was going to try to do anything, I would do it. We're not going to play around with this. But when I went there, these people didn't have problems with doing the thing. What they had problems with was thinking about it constantly. Like they're constantly thinking about different ways to do it. Like it's like an itch they just can't scratch. Like it's something that they're missing. Obviously they didn't have God, right? Like that's part of the issue. Like no God, no Jesus. They didn't know that. And I also wasn't a Christian at the time, so like, a blind leading the blind. Where are you gonna end up? But they just their issue was filling up their mind with the thoughts of how to commit suicide. And I was thinking about this last night. This false idol can literally be anything. It's just something that's taken up that space in your brain that shouldn't be taking up that space. These suicide people had a support group, right? But we have our support group as Christians that we should be able to talk about these model trains. I've been thinking about travel, like it's just taking up too much space about like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there. Like literally, like I should have been doing something else. And I was like looking at different national parks. What time of year could we go? I can't do that. I'm still in school until next year. I literally have zero money, zero time to be able to do that, but it was still taking up space in my brain. What I can do is read my Bible. What I can do is go to church. What I can do is check on my people. But I wasn't doing that. I was looking at national parks, which is great, fine and dandy. But I literally can't do anything with that. Like I'm not planning the trip right now. There's no fees. I don't have any vacation. It can't happen. So why was I doing it? It's a distraction. It's a false idol. So I thought it was interesting. I wanted to share that with you and see what your thoughts and feelings on that were. If you have a false idol in your life, to identify it. Because if it can be model trains, if it can be like looking at campers and trucks, it can literally be anything. So look out for it. Work on it. You got this. I'm going to end it here. That has been Revelations 12. Next time we get into 13 and we see what old Satan's going to be doing in the future. This has been the Morning Bible Study, and I'm your host, Logan McCulley. I'm out.